We met in the lab. I was doing my postdoc. I was finishing up a paper, and that's when Abby started in the lab.
Yeah, so I started my PhD. We were both working for Dario Vignali at the time at St. Jude. And we actually met, I actually met him when he was in the hood working, probably very tired at this point because he'd been working on revisions for a long time. And then I accidentally knocked over his ice bucket that he had propped up on the edge of a trash bin.
Yeah.
And I, of course, started laughing and was like, oh, sorry. And he was like, it's fine, I'll clean it up. Just don't worry about it.
Yeah. At the time, she was just rotating.
Because I was just rotating.
Yeah.
So I was very like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, excited about science. And he was very like jaded at the end of trying to get a paper out.
Yeah.
Then I started working on Neuropilin 1 also. So we ended up later bonding over a kind of a joint love of Neuropilin. And so then that was when we became really good friends.
Yeah. And she worked like with me. I was teaching her how to do some stuff. And so we were coworkers first, really. And then it very quickly what turned into, like grabbing coffees all the time. Like going to lunches, talking about science, the ins and outs of immunology, but also just like how to work in the lab and that kind of thing. Like we were really good friends, like super friends. Like it was great. I thought she was cute. To the end of when it was time to start my lab, because I was interviewing everywhere, and she was of course still working on her PhD, and at the same time Dario had announced that he was moving to Pittsburgh, and so she was just like, I'd really like you close by. It'd be cool if you were close by.
I think we just become so integral to like daily life with each other. Like we were a good support system for each other.
Yeah.
We had this, we were the only two people working on Neuropilin at the time, and so we had this like, I don't know, we were kind of like this little team, working on this really interesting molecule that we kind of still both do things with now.
Yeah, for sure.
And, we bonded over our love of that and Tregs, and now we both have labs that
do those things.
Tregs, which is cool.
Yeah, and it turned out that Pittsburgh was the right fit for me. And so it was really nice that we were, we were together. Like that we had this kind of built-in support system of friendship when we moved. And so she moved up here to help get her lab moved up. Dario's lab moved up. We met up the day that I got here to kind of, hang in there. And we fell in love, and that was it.
Yeah.
Like, at that point, that was like, it had transitioned at that point.
I think like we had a few times like this where like we weren't around each other for like a couple months. And then getting to see each other again, it was like, oh, okay, maybe there's more here than just like being a good buddy in the lab. Yes, all the time, actually. As I mentioned, like when we first started working together, I guess in 2012, then we had this like joint love of Tregs and this molecule and everything. And so we worked very closely then. And there's some couples that there's a lot of science couples, and there's some couples that need space at work and like can't work with their spouse or partner. And then there's the other side of things, which are people that really just like to work together, and we happen to work really well together. Our labs are next to each other, which is really fun. And we've done this really forever. We've always talked about like, new pieces of data we found. I do microbiome and immunotherapy work, and Greg does metabolism and immunotherapy work. And we're both very like CD4, T-cell centric. So we have some overlap. And especially with microbiome and metabolism, we're now learning that these things are really integrally related.
That part of it is really, again, starting as coworkers, becoming really good friends, and then, becoming partners, really. It's been great for our personal lives, but it's been really great for our professional lives too, because it is really like every day. Like, when we were starting, like we grab happy hour, right? And we would talk about what we found that day, like what cool piece of data we had and what we can do now, and bouncing ideas off of each other constantly. Every grant that I ever put in, every grant that she ever put in, we always had another pair of eyes on it. Just one last look before I submit. Could you just like run through it real quick? Or, whatever, like I'm writing this paper, how do these figures look? That's been, having two scientists together like that, has really been, like really great, but it's also like, it's been great because it gives us this like immense connection that also improves our personal relationship as well.
Yeah, and it's nice to have somebody who like understands like the stress and the excitement of science, I think. So, you know, the fact that we work all day and then we go home and we want to talk about science and the good or the bad of the day. It's nice to have a partner who's like excited to listen and talk to you about it. But we are actually now starting kind of from scratch a project that we're working on together, going back to our first love of regulatory T cells. And so now we're kind of starting like an official collaboration in that.
Yeah, we're definitely thinking a lot about how, you know, how diet impacts both your immune system and your microbiome, and how that's good or bad for responses to immunotherapy. So we're super, super excited because it is something where it's got three parts, one thing that we both love together, and then one thing that we both love kind of separately, which is the microbiome and metabolism. And so we've been really excited about officially kind of, we've generated a lot of data, and now it's time to like, you know, really get it out there, and it's been a lot of fun. It's really just been such an honor to, and really just to like, I feel very lucky that I get to like work and live with my best friend, you know, which has been, you know, that's been something that's kept me going even when things are really super stressful. So I mean, you want to go first or should I?
You can go first.
I mean, I think, so there's two big things I feel like. One is in both science and in love, you have to like swing for the fences. You know, you have to, you know, try the big thing, right? The big thing, you know, whatever it might be, you know, kissing Abby for the first time was a swing for the fences kind of moment because I wasn't sure how it was all going to go, how, you know, whether or not it was going to be well received or anything like that. Not unlike putting in a paper to Nature or putting in an R01 application, you know, you guys got to try. And I think the other second part of that is that when you swing for the fences, right, you have to kind of, you got to persevere, right? Is that it's not always going to be puppies and rainbows. You're going to get those comments back from your grants. You're going to get, and you're also going to come up with times where it's just going to be difficult because, you know, you're two humans living together. But you have to persevere. And I think those two things together, something that definitely I learned in the lab, I think is directly applicable to your relationship, you know.
And the other thing that I think, you know, partially in love, although you're pretty easy to be around, but also like being in love and having a family versus science is, both of those things have taught me to be more patient, which I think is good. So science will definitely teach you to be patient because everything takes forever. Papers, you know, projects take forever, papers take forever, grants take forever, everything just takes a long time. And so learning to be patient and, you know, enjoy the ride along the way, I think is really important. And that's something that is like one of the best things about, you know, being in love and being married is getting to like, you have to learn patience, mainly from our kids, less from you. You're pretty easy. But just enjoying the ride along the way, you know, and not like, I feel like we're always racing to the next thing, either like, you know, to get the next degree, to get the next paper, to get the next grant. And this happens in personal life as well. And so I think, you know, taking a step back and saying, okay, life is pretty good. We say this sometimes too, like life is pretty good. Let's like enjoy this, like where we are right now. A little bit. So
it's been fun. An interesting piece of data, right? Is that Pittsburgh is actually the grayest city in the country. And so every year we have to get out for a weekend, and sometimes they've hit on Valentine's Day.
So, yes, and I do actually remember one Valentine's Day. This was like early, so now, you know, it's a little different with kids and stuff like that. We always know if we're going somewhere, but early, like pre-kids, I remember one Valentine's Day. It was the first time that we did something like this. You gave me a card, and in the card had a printout of this like awesome resort that we were going to go to. I think it was in Mexico, probably.
It
was a little picture, and it was like, oh, we're going to do a getaway, and it was like this very spontaneous thing.
Nothing is spontaneous anymore because you have two kids.
But that was really exciting because I thought I was just opening up a card. And Greg writes like the best cards. So he like comes from a family of like, you write like a nice long card. So that's like our tradition is we write long cards to each other that are just, talking about what we're thankful for and stuff. And so that's normally what we get each other. But then Greg like snuck in this little piece of paper. So I opened the card expecting just like a sweet note, and it was a sweet note and a trip to Mexico, which was really nice.
Listening is, that's a really important thing in any relationship, but I think if you're a couple in science, you got two major issues, like two things that you're thinking about: your job, and most scientists are obsessed with their job, and obviously like your personal life. And so you have to remember that you have to be an attentive listener to both things, right? When people complain about something at work, sometimes they just want to complain. They don't want a solution, right? Like sometimes you have to vent. And there are times where we have constructive, discussions about, I think that would be one way to take on that problem, or that's a potential solution. But sometimes you don't want scientific advice. You just want to have so there is a time when you can mesh, when somebody wants to, every time I'll complain about something at work and I don't really need a solution. I just want to have a personal discussion. When two people don't do the same job and they don't speak the same language, they can just say, it'll be okay. Don't worry. I'm sure it'll work out. I don't know what you're talking about. But because when we know what each other is talking about so well, right, at work, it can be very easy to go into like grant mode. I wouldn't have done the experiment that way. So it's no surprise it didn't work, or whatever. So I think understanding and listening and understanding when to provide constructive criticism about something that they're working on versus just being there for each other and being just like a good supportive partner, that is a really important thing to delineate early and to keep in mind all the time.
I think you have to learn how to navigate being a couple while at work. So obviously if you're in two different fields, it's less of an issue. But if you're in the same field, like we're both cancer immunologists, you have to learn what kind of couple you are in that space. Like, and I mentioned this earlier, are you a couple that you need to be able to go to work and kind of be on your own and do your own thing? Or are you better, in a situation where you get to bounce ideas off each other all day and kind of take advantage of that? So I think it's important for each person in the relationship to know themselves and know how they'll be most successful at work while also maintaining a good relationship. And the other thing I would say is have fun and enjoy it, because you are one of the few people who I think are in like the best position, like basically get to go do my favorite thing all day, which means like work is fun for me. And I get to go have fun at work with my best friend all day. Right. So there are very few people who get that opportunity. But yeah, have fun and like be thankful that you get to work with your best friend every day,